Alarms tore through the council chamber before the vote was even finished. I was not there. Nobody from Earth was there. But I have read the transcripts so many times that I can still hear the pounding gavel of stone against stone, still feel the weight of a decision made about my entire species without a single human voice allowed to speak. The chamber belonged to the Great Coalition, a union of 11 star-faring peoples who had ruled the galaxy for longer than human history had existed. They called their meeting a judgment. They called Earth a problem. A representative with silver skin and a voice like grinding metal stood before the others and read our file aloud. Endless wars, endless weapons, a species that had split the atom and pointed it at itself before it ever pointed a telescope at the stars. A species that could not be trusted to grow up quietly the way every other race in the coalition had been required to grow up. The vote took 4 minutes. Earth lost by a wide margin. A fleet was already waiting near the edge of our solar system, hidden behind the dark curve of a dead comet, ready to carry out the ruling the moment it was signed. Their orders were simple: locate the primary population centers, remove the threat, leave nothing behind that could grow back. I did not know any of this when it happened. None of us did. We were living ordinary lives, going to work, raising children, arguing about small things that felt important at the time. My name is Daniel Cole, and 3 years before that judgment was passed, I was recruited into a program so secret that even my own family believed I worked at a communications company in orbit. The truth was very different. Decades earlier, long before I was old enough to understand what was happening around me, a research station on the far side of the moon picked up something that should not have existed. A signal. Not random noise from a dying star, but a structured pulse, deliberate and precise, sweeping past our system like a searchlight. It was gone within hours, but the engineers who studied it understood immediately that we were not alone, and worse, that whoever was out there had technology far beyond ours. Governments argued for years about what to do. Some wanted to broadcast peaceful greetings into the void. Others wanted to stay silent and hope no one had noticed us. But a small group of scientists and military planners believed something the others refused to accept. If a civilization out there ever decided humanity was a threat, no peaceful greeting would save us. So while diplomats debated, a quiet project began in secret, buried under budgets nobody questioned, and facilities disguised as ordinary satellites. We called it the Deadlock Program. I was pulled from flight school without much explanation, given new papers, and flown to a station orbiting Jupiter that officially did not exist. There, for years, I trained alongside people from every corner of Earth. Pilots from small farming towns, engineers who had grown up with nothing, soldiers who had seen every kind of conflict our own world could produce. We built warships unlike anything Earth had ever attempted, vessels shaped less like graceful starcraft and more like clenched fists, covered in plating meant to survive impossible pressures, armed with weapons designed by people who understood, deep in their bones, that surviving a fight sometimes matters more than fighting fair. We trained for an enemy we had never seen, based on nothing but guesses and a handful of decoded fragments from that old signal. Some nights I lay awake, wondering if we were preparing for nothing at all, if the fleet forming quietly around Jupiter's shadow was destined to gather dust in some forgotten hangar while the years passed and nobody ever came. Then came the morning everything changed. I was running a diagnostic check on my ship when Commander Owen Price burst into the hangar bay, his face pale in a way I had never seen before. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The silence that followed his words was louder than any alarm. "They found something entering the system," he said. "Something big. It is not one of ours." Within minutes, every screen on the station lit up with the same image. A cluster of alien vessels, sleek and curved like the inside of a shell, moving through the outer edge of our solar system with the calm confidence of a fleet that expected no resistance whatsoever. Our long-range sensors struggled to process their size. They were enormous, built by a civilization that clearly did not fear anything it might encounter. I remember Captain Laura Bennett standing at the command platform, watching the same feed as the rest of us, her jaw tight, her eyes narrow with something between fear and cold focus. She had commanded soldiers on Earth before joining this program, had seen conflict most of us in the room had only read about in history books. If anyone understood what was coming, it was her. "They are not hiding," she said quietly. "They do not think they need to." The alien fleet continued its slow approach, gliding past the outer planets, as though our entire solar system belonged to them already. Sensors picked up strange transmissions sweeping ahead of the ships, some kind of signal broadcast toward Earth itself, though we had no way yet to translate it. Later we would learn it was not a greeting. It was a formality, a final notice sent moments before judgment was carried out, a courtesy, extended only because their laws required it, not because they expected an answer. Every person on that station understood, in that single moment, that the years of secret training were no longer theoretical. The enemy we had built ourselves to fight was finally here, and it had not come to talk. Captain Bennett turned from the screen and looked across the command deck at all of us gathered there, waiting. "This is not a drill," she said. "This is not a test. Everything we trained for begins now." I felt my hands tighten on the edge of my console, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the low hum of the station's engines. Around me, pilots and engineers, who had spent years preparing for an enemy without a face, finally understood that the wait was over. Commander Price moved quickly across the deck, calling out coordinates, confirming ship readiness, requesting status from every vessel docked along our hidden fleet line. His voice cracked with urgency, but never with fear. That steadiness alone helped calm the room. "All deadlock vessels, prepare for immediate launch," he called out. "This is what we built for." I looked out through the viewport toward the black curve of space where our hangar bay opened into the void. Somewhere out there, drifting silently past Jupiter's shadow, our small fleet of warships sat ready, engines cold, weapons untested in true conflict, crewed by people who had trained endlessly but never truly faced what waited for them now. The alien fleet continued its advance, unaware that anything stood between them and the destruction they had been sent to deliver. They believed, as their entire civilization believed, that Earth was defenseless. They believed history would remember this as another quiet ending to another troublesome species. They had no idea that humanity had spent decades quietly preparing exactly for this moment. As I strapped into my ship and felt the engines hum to life beneath me, I thought of every person on the surface of Earth who had no idea what was approaching, who were living their lives completely unaware that their entire future rested on ships built in secret, crewed by strangers, hidden in the shadow of a planet none of them would ever visit. Captain Bennett's voice came through my headset, calm and steady despite everything. "Launch sequence beginning in 60 seconds, she said. "Whatever happens next, remember why we are here." I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath, and thought of home. Then I opened them again, and watched the stars shift as my ship began to move. The fleet the galaxy had sent to end us was about to meet the one thing it never expected, a species that had spent its entire history preparing for exactly this kind of moment, and had quietly built something the rest of the galaxy knew nothing about. We were no longer waiting. We were coming. My ship's engines roared to life beneath me as the launch bay doors slid open, revealing the endless dark of space stretched out ahead. Every muscle in my body was tense, my hands steady on the controls even though my heart pounded against my ribs. Around me, dozens of deadlock warships began pulling away from the station, forming into tight formations we had rehearsed 1,000 times in simulations but never once under real conditions. Commander Price's voice crackled through my headset, sharp and clear despite the chaos building around us. "Formation Kestrel, hold your positions until my signal," he said. "Do not engage until they are within our defensive perimeter." I glanced at my display, watching the alien fleet's projected path stretch across the screen like a slow-moving shadow. They were still advancing with the same unhurried confidence, completely unaware that anything stood between them and Earth. Our sensors placed their lead vessel at a size that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, easily 10 times the length of my own ship, its hull covered in strange curved plating that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light around it. Grace Milton's voice came through next, steady despite the tremor I could hear underneath it. She flew the ship beside mine and had been my closest friend since the earliest days of training. "Daniel, do you see their formation?" she asked. "It is nothing like what we practiced against in the simulations." I looked closer at the data streaming across my console. She was right. The alien ships moved with a strange, almost lazy spacing between them. Nothing like the tight defensive clusters our own tacticians had predicted. It was the formation of a fleet that had never once needed to defend itself. A fleet built entirely around offense because nothing before us had ever fought back. "That is good for us," I said, trying to sound more certain than I felt. "They are not expecting resistance." Commander Price's voice returned, cutting through the quiet tension building across the comm channels. "All ships, hold silent running until the signal fleet is inside Marker 7, he ordered. "We only get one chance at surprise. Do not waste it." The minutes that followed felt longer than any training exercise I had ever endured. I watched the alien fleet grow larger and larger across my display, their massive shapes sliding past the orbit of the outer planets with slow, deliberate movement. Their scanners swept space around them constantly, searching for any sign of resistance, yet somehow failing to detect the small, cold, silent shapes of our own fleet drifting in the shadows nearby. It was Captain Bennett who gave the order that changed everything. "All deadlock ships, engage," she said, her voice steady and clear across every channel. "For Earth." The response was immediate. Every ship in our formation surged forward at once, breaking from stealth and lighting up the darkness with engine trails as we closed the distance toward the alien fleet. I pushed my ship into a tight spiraling approach, weapons systems arming as targeting locks began flashing across my display. The first alien scout ship never saw us coming. Our combined weapons fire struck it before its shields could even fully engage, and within seconds, it broke apart in a bright flash against the black backdrop of space. Cheers rang out across the comm channels, quickly cut short as the rest of the fleet reacted. The alien formation scattered in visible confusion, ships turning and repositioning with none of the practiced precision I expected from a civilization so advanced. It became clear very quickly that they had never trained for an enemy who fought back, let alone one who fought without hesitation. "Daniel, on your left," Grace called out suddenly. I banked hard just as a beam of energy sliced through the space where my ship had been a moment earlier. My heart slammed against my chest as I spun my vessel around, bringing my weapons to bear on the alien fighter that had fired at me. It moved with strange, jerking motions, clearly still adjusting to the idea that its target could dodge. I fired twice, and the alien fighter spun away trailing smoke before disappearing in a final burst of light. Around me, the battle unfolded in chaotic bursts of motion and light. Our smaller, more maneuverable ships darted between the alien vessels, striking at weak points our engineers had identified through years of studying that ancient signal fragment. Larger deadlock cruisers unleashed coordinated volleys that tore through alien shielding technology, clearly never designed to withstand focused, repeated strikes from multiple directions at once. Commander Price's voice rang out again, urgent but controlled. "Their command ship is trying to retreat," he said. "Do not let it escape. If it warns the rest of their fleet, we lose our only advantage." I pulled my ship into a tight turn, joining 3 others, as we raced toward the alien command vessel, attempting to pull away from the fighting. It was larger than anything else in their formation, its hull glowing faintly with some kind of defensive energy field. Our combined fire hammered against that shield again and again, each strike weakening it further, until finally, with one final coordinated volley, it shattered entirely. The command ship's engines flared briefly as it tried to jump away, but it was too late. A final strike from one of our cruisers tore through its main hull, and the vessel broke apart in eerie silence, debris scattering outward in every direction. Silence followed for several long seconds across every comm channel, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. Then Captain Bennett's voice returned, calm but heavy with meaning. "Enemy scout fleet neutralized," she said. "All ships, report status and prepare for what comes next." This was only their first probe. The real fleet is still out there. Around me, ships began calling in one by one, confirming they had survived the encounter with only minor damage. Grace's ship pulled alongside mine, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We actually did it," she said. "We stopped them." I stared out at the drifting wreckage of the alien scout fleet, the first real proof that humanity's decades of secret preparation had not been wasted. But even as relief washed over me, a colder thought settled in beside it. This had only been a scouting force, a small fraction of whatever waited beyond the edge of our solar system. Somewhere out there, the true fleet of the coalition was already receiving reports of what had happened here, and I understood, with complete certainty, that whatever came next would be far larger, far angrier, and far more prepared for the resistance they never expected to find. Commander Price's voice returned once more, quieter now, almost thoughtful. "They came here believing we were nothing," he said. "Now they know the truth. The question is whether they retreat, or whether they come back with everything they have." I looked out at the stars stretching endlessly beyond my viewport, thinking of the countless unaware people living their lives on the surface of Earth below, completely unaware of how close they had just come to losing everything. We had won the first battle, but deep down I understood that this had only been the beginning. Within hours, sensors across our fleet detected new activity at the very edge of the solar system, far beyond where the scout fleet had first appeared. A second signal, larger and far more powerful than anything we had detected before, began sweeping slowly across space, moving steadily in our direction. Captain Bennett studied the readings with a grim expression, her voice quiet as she addressed the fleet. "They already know," she said, "and they are not sending scouts this time." I felt a cold weight settle into my chest as I stared at the growing cluster of alien signatures appearing across our long-range sensors. Whatever we had just survived was only a small taste of what remained beyond our solar system's edge, gathering itself for a response far greater than anything we had yet faced. Grace's voice came through quietly, steady despite the fear I could hear hidden beneath it. "How many ships do you think are coming?" she asked. I did not have an answer. None of us did. All we could do was repair our ships as quickly as possible, and ready ourselves for whatever the galaxy intended to send against us next. The first battle had ended in our favor, but somewhere out in the vast darkness beyond our solar system, an ancient and powerful civilization was gathering its true strength, preparing to answer humanity's unexpected resistance with everything it had. 3 days passed before the second fleet arrived, and every hour of that waiting felt heavier than the last. Repair crews worked around the clock, patching hulls and rearming weapon systems, while engineers pushed themselves to exhaustion, trying to squeeze every possible advantage out of ships that had already proven themselves once. I barely slept, spending most of my time either in the cockpit running diagnostics or in the briefing room studying the growing cluster of alien signatures our sensors continued to track. Commander Price gathered every pilot and officer into the main briefing hall on the third day, his face drawn tight with the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much responsibility for too long. Behind him, a massive display showed the incoming alien formation in full detail for the first time. "This is not a scouting fleet," he said. "Long-range analysis puts their numbers at nearly 60 vessels, several of them significantly larger than anything we destroyed 3 days ago. They are not here to test us anymore. They are here to finish what they started." A murmur passed through the room, quickly silenced when Captain Bennett stepped forward. She had a way of commanding attention without ever raising her voice, simply through the steady certainty in her expression. "They believe our first victory was luck," she said. "They believe a larger,